All right, well, welcome everyone to episode 2 of What to Do with Your Old Porn and Other Conundrums. Is that the...
Sure, we still haven't changed the name of it.
You haven't changed the name of it. And my name's Thom Jennings. I'm here with...
John Jack.
John Jack Burris. And, if you go back and you listen to the first show, that was really kind of an introduction to the two of us. And
which we'd like to apologize for now in advance.
You're always apologizing. You apologized.
No, you were apologizing in the last episode for several things.
Me?
Yes, about being a teenage father. You kept beating yourself up over that, and I know your children and your family loves you and adores you.
Your family loves you too.
Yeah, I know, but you have nothing to apologize for, my friend.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I apologized.
Golly.
There you go. So the topic this week, we decided we're gonna tackle a topic. So here we are tackling. And the topic I came up with this week is fidelity.
Like REO Speedwagon?
That's high infidelity, which actually this will be about infidelity, because weird thing happened to me today. I was at work, and this young, I always call her neighbor because her classroom is right next to mine. I'm a school teacher. And yesterday I had heard that she was leaving. And so my vice principal says, the reason she's leaving is because she's moving back to her home, which was, I think, near Poughkeepsie or whatever. And we live near the Buffalo region, just for context, in case you're out of the area. And so I didn't really think much of it. And I went to her and I said, I'm really sorry to hear you're leaving. And she's a young girl, probably 26, 27. And she said, well, when I get a minute, I'll come and tell you why. So she came to talk to me at the end of the day today. And she said, well, the reason I'm leaving is because I have to move back in with my parents. I'm 4 months pregnant, and I found out my husband is having an affair.
Oh, no.
And they have another child. So she moved, 3-4 hours away from her home. Her husband is, he doesn't work, I guess. He was a 1099 roofing or gutter contractor or something. And so he's not working for the winter season. And in turn, he's found himself embroiled.
Kind of like our last episode a little bit. A little too much time on his hands.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's interesting. And, I felt bad for her, and I gave her a lot of advice. I gave her advice that I know you are not going to agree with. So maybe this will be...
I think you might be surprised.
Okay. So what I told her was, because I myself had been on the wrong end of a extramarital affair, and saw the damage that it did. Now, I said this because I believe it from experience. You're not just cheating on your spouse, you're cheating on your whole family. You're cheating on your own parents, your in-laws, and of course your children, because now you're denying them a stable relationship with mom and dad, right?
Yep.
I said to her, because she kept saying to me, we agreed to this, we agreed to that, and I feel bad if he doesn't have a place to live, and this, that, and the other thing. And I said to her, at some point you need to dig down deep inside and find the hate and anger that you need to get through this situation, because he doesn't deserve your pity right now. And you need that strength and anger to get past this feeling of helplessness. So what do you think? I mean, I know you, as a very strong man of faith, may have disagreed with that, but I don't know. That's what I told her.
I don't know that I would say I disagreed with it. I mean, you're speaking from your own experience.
Yes.
And I can't discredit your experience. I don't think staying in a abusive relationship under any situation could be considered good, because, even under the vaguest Christian understanding, you're supposed to stay married and make that covenant work. But you're supposed to stay married and make that covenant work to draw the other closer to God. It's an active thing, not a passive thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that, I don't necessarily know what that means. Again, this podcast is not about answers so much as it is maybe poking a couple questions.
Yeah.
And making you think about things, but none of us has all the answers. I mean, I know scripturally you are supposed to make your marriages work and hold those vows and or I can't think of the term.
Well, that was one of the issues I had with going through my divorce. So we were both attending a church, and even the pastor said to me, he said, like I was a lay preacher. I mean, I was doing sermons and everything at this church, and he said that I couldn't do the sermons because clearly I couldn't lord over my household because my wife was having an affair. And so I couldn't lord over the church because of this going on, even though I wasn't the one that was having the extramarital affair. And granted, folks, this is 20 years ago. But I think I do remember that early on, I really had the initial shock, which if somebody out there has either been through this or could potentially go through it, as I told her, it's a very normal emotion. I mean, the first thing is just this shock. We talked a little bit on the last episode
trying
about
to process it. Even.
Yeah. Like you got a person that's a friend and, you meet them and everything's great and, life is well. And the last person on earth you think that's going to do something to you is this person, either friend, spouse, child, whatever. But in her case, see where I felt I made mistakes early on was that I was trying to be the nice guy. And in a situation where you're fighting for your family, you can't necessarily be the nice guy at the outset. If this person has cheated on you, why would you enter into a verbal agreement, a verbal separation agreement? And I did that, and it blew up in my face. So I said to her, because I said, look, I know you're sad. You should feel that way. But if you listen to nothing else, I said, you, have to realize that until further notice, this guy is your enemy. You can't trust anything that he says or does, and you need to go on the offensive. And the only way you can do that is if you dig down deep inside and start to be angry for the deception.
See, the pastoral approach would be to tell her to give him a second chance.
Oh,
and then,
no.
And they need, let me finish.
Okay.
It's just 100% sarcasm. Give him a second chance. Let them try to reconcile the relationship, because through God can work through all things.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they're both devoted enough to God and are trusting enough, it will work out. The caveat to that is one person might want it, the other person might just want to stay in the house. And ultimately what ends up happening is the cheater cheats, because cheating cheaters cheat. And when the cheating cheater cheats again, that person on the other side of the bed that has been reluctantly laying there for so long, at some point has to deal with the fact that the cheating cheater cheated again, which is going to make trusting anybody in the future exponentially more difficult as far as being in a relationship, having a relationship, or having somebody that can understand and show enough grace, empathy, and love to handle somebody that's been cheated on by a cheating cheater repeatedly.
Yeah. And here's another thing that the mistake that I feel that people make is, in her case too, she was getting angry at the girlfriend, or whatever you want to call it. The paramour, I guess, is the proper term. I called her the slut, but
you would.
I said, look, I said, here's the reality of the situation. You have no reason to be mad at her because she is no one in your life. You by focusing your anger on her for what she has done to your family, you're absolving him of what he did to your family. I mean, you're pregnant. You have a young child, and then she says, well, I'm worried too about, our son and how he's going to react because he really loves his father. And I said, he loves the idea of the father that he sees, but if he was a real father, he wouldn't have done that to his child, especially an unborn one. I just find it despicable. But yes. It's easy though, because it really, if you think about it, if you get mad at the paramour, it does kind of give the other person
a little freedom to the one that shouldn't really.
Oh, it's not me. They came on to me. I mean, I've heard this. In fact, I just had a situation with another family friend who her husband had the exact same was doing the exact same type of work that I do as a high school teacher. He was 37 years old, children, married, and everything, and he was having an affair with his 15-year-old student.
Oh my.
So he gets sentenced 6 years to life. You know, this person calls me, we discuss it, and I said I said he's not going to be out.
Now,
they stayed. By the way, they stayed married to him, even after all of this, and now that he's been sentenced to jail. And I told her very much a similar thing, like, you can't stay married to him.
If it's active versus passive action on her part. I mean, is it an active? Is the staying married a choice in an active form of the hopes of redemption, or is it a passive choice in the forms of guilt? And I know this is the right thing. What I'm supposed to do is make my marriage work. Because if it's passive, it's not the right thing.
Well, we've had another family friend whose husband had an open affair on her. Tried, they almost split up, and she said, "This is a friend of my wife's actually." And her excuse for not leaving her husband was that she didn't like the idea of divorce. Now, this young lady with her husband, she had been divorced once before as well. And I think that that's another issue when it comes to fidelity or relationships and things like that, that tendency to blame yourself. Because if you've had one divorce, you automatically assume that somehow if there's a second divorce, that this is a reflection on you as an individual, because you don't know how to choose spouses, or you're an idiot for not figuring this stuff out. And you know what? Sometimes things happen. And
sometimes we make choices based on the situation or the circumstance that we're in.
Yeah.
Versus the situation or the circumstance that we want to achieve, like having a good loving relationship. I mean, you don't necessarily go after the guy that drives the the Porsche Carrera around town with his jacket half undone in the summertime because you think he's going to be a good, dedicated, support to you, and he's going to put you first when he's maybe already giving you indications that might not be the case.
Yeah.
But feelings and emotions are a very strong motivator, and loneliness will make you do a lot of things.
Well, that's another thing I didn't even bring up, but that's a great point, is loneliness is a very real thing as well. Or my sister will say, talk about like financial dependence. And that could go either way. That's not necessarily gender specific. I mean, I would assume it's more in the case of females even today with...
Well, that's sexist.
Well, it's true, but...
Still sexist.
Either way, financial dependence...
We can edit that later.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, the title of the podcast is porn. And I mean, anybody that hears porn, very few people think of, females. Females don't typically like porn.
No, it's what to do with my old porn.
Your old porn. Yeah.
I don't know. I hear that the rate of women utilizing pornography is on the increase.
Well,
perhaps a topic for another episode.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should make a porn for some of these older ladies to.
Squeeze me?
No, I'm just kidding. Strike that. No, we're gonna leave it in. But we were just kidding. I was kidding. Jack just gave me the most. Jack gave me that stink eye that he gave me the first time he met me. So you go back to the first episode, and you'll get that. But but I think at the core. The thing that there was a part of me that really felt conflicted in a way to tell somebody I wasn't necessarily telling them to hate that person, but I guess I kind of was. I was saying, you need to get angry. Like you need to get angry to be able to maneuver through some of these emotions. And I mean, in some ways we see this even in sporting contests, where you see a team that for whatever reason you can't, it's not a statistic that you can measure, but you just have this feeling that this team has, they call it in football, momentum, and part of that is just digging deep inside and being a little angry. The Hulk syndrome, for people that remember the Hulk.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like being a Buffalo Bills fan.
Wow. Yeah.
You knew I was going to go there.
I know. But that's a situation that as a fan, I can't help them. I can maybe convey some emotion, but when it comes to an individual situation, I guess in some ways you have the choice to be, some people may characterize it as you have the choice to be the victim or eventually be the victor. But I don't like to use the term victor in a divorce because at the end of the day, and you know I use that expression a lot, you have your come to Jesus moment, which is my other favorite expression Jack says I use. But at the end of the day, you need to be the victor to a certain degree, but nobody really wins in a divorce. But you can at least be in a situation where you've put yourself in a much better position in terms of setting yourself up for future relationships, showing your kids too, not to sit back and be a victim, because a lot of times I work with kids now whose parents, they have these cycles of poverty and abuse and everything, and they think that abuse is normal, and abuse is not.
Now, see, I think I would like to say that if I found myself in a situation like that, you don't know what somebody else would do, but I'd be very, well, I kind of know what I would do because it's what I do, but I'd be very reluctant to offer advice personally. And I'm not saying this as, judgment on you in any straight, you or you, I am me.
Right.
But I'd be very reluctant to offer advice one way or the other, lest it be misconstrued for one thing, and lest I think, based on the limited information that I have from this individual and the limited knowledge I have of their personal life, that I could. I could venture down the uncomfortable road of listening to them for a while and fighting that emotion, or that I shouldn't say emotion, but that draw to know that there was only one thing that I could do with them that might help, which is what, Tom?
You just pray with them.
You know it. I would just pray with them.
I'm an advice guy. You're a pray guy.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody praying with them. I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think they've ever misconstrued it. I don't think they've ever walked away offended. I don't think they've ever been upset.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying, because because unfortunately divorces, people get caught up in them, and I would not. It's interesting you mentioned this, because this was in my brain today as well. I would never text what I told her. Like, I would never create a record of it, because I know how those types of things can be twisted,
right,
especially by the other person. And then you now become part of the narrative, and you get caught up in
repeating the story.
whatever that thing is, and everybody becomes really tribal. But this was a young lady that I only knew for a short period of time, but I really liked her. I mean, she was just good, and it's just like, I don't know. In some ways, it traumatized me a little bit to hear it. You know what I mean? Because
interesting story. You should say that about becoming a part of the narrative. I'm showing Tom my tattoo on my leg. Yeah. I have a tattoo of what?
It's a woman with a sexy woman with a vacuum cleaner. But you clean carpets for a living.
I do clean carpets, but
yeah.
Do you know what that was supposed to be?
No.
Originally?
No.
It was actually going to be like a maid. It looks more like a nurse. I'm sorry. It looks more like a French maid now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hideously big on my leg, and it looks like an old man tattoo at this point. But talking about becoming part of the narrative, because I've repeated this so many times, and this was from a advice highly trained doctor professional. So it wasn't like, the guy that worked in the room next to me, or the schmuck that wanted to pray with me on the street. This was a highly educated professional that I was, for any number of reasons, seeking counsel for, to try to make my either relationship work, or to try to understand why it wasn't, which I don't think, obviously trying to make it work didn't work, and trying to figure out why it wasn't, in his perspective, didn't work. It didn't work because I was a dick. That's why my relationship didn't work. Getting back to the what to do with your old porn context. It didn't work because I wasn't the man that I should have been. It didn't not work because the person I was married to was a horrible human being. People tend to react based on the way you treat them. And if you treat somebody poorly, they tend to get a little gun shy. But after a couple of years of going to this doctor, he had told me in no uncertain terms after meeting him and him meeting my my ex-wife, that when I not saying anything bad, but he saw the dynamic of the relationship. This is why I'm saying it did not work, even his advice, because the most highly educated opinion will not work if it's not geared in the right direction, which it was not. Which is not to make the marriage work, it's ultimately to serve God. But he told me after meeting her that she was poison and I needed to get away from her. So this tattoo that is on my leg was a reactionary tattoo, as I think many of them are. It was originally going to be a nurse, looking much like it is, straddling a vial with a red liquid in it, which would be the poison. Mm. Fortunately, I had a tattoo artist who was like, dude, this might not be the greatest idea. So he was actually of more use to me than this professional psychiatrist that I had been seeing for a couple of years. The tattoo artist was. And he says, this might not be the greatest idea because, and we had a couple discussions over it. I'm like, I guess I can see what you're saying. And I can tell you right now that I am pretty glad that I don't have that nurse tattooed on my leg. And I do not believe, and I'm going to go back and say this in case anybody's listening, I do not believe my ex-wife is poison. I believe she was poisoned by, a poor husband who made poor choices, and maybe a disillusionment of what she was going to get out of what she was pursuing, but that didn't make her poison. It made the relationship toxic, but the relationships are something that only the individual can do something about.
I have a slightly different take on that. I look at it, I'll call it the antifreeze take. I just made this up. So, and then we'll wrap up because we're at 20 minutes. But, antifreeze, if supposedly if cats lick your antifreeze because it's sweet tasting, they'll die.
I cannot wait to hear where this is going.
But you put in your car, it helps keep your car from overheating. So something can be poison to you, but still have purpose somewhere else.
Oh, and,
so I think this ultimately has to do with a greater topic, which we may be able to touch on later. Which
would have to do with God's grace and
compatibility.
Again,
compatibility.
It would have to do with in no uncertain terms the changes in your life and the things you go through. What do you do with the old things?
Yeah, the old porn.
What do you do with the old porn?
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Great discussion. This was episode 2. If you like it, please share it. Please rate it. We would like any kind of feedback. This is one of those things that we're just going to kind of let it go where it needs to go and let it evolve, and hopefully it'll turn into something beautiful, or
it'll just burn in the fire.
Burn in the fire. All right. Once again, I am Thom Jennings, and he is
John Jack.
Burris. We'll see you next time on What to Do with Your Old Porn.